At last, we did it! We completed the entire Lonesome Road DLC, and now we can reap the rich rewards. I covered all of the loot that we can get as I found it while producing this series, but I understand 10 episodes is a whole lot. You're tired. You don't want to listen to Ulysses anymore. You just want to get the gear and move on. I get it. And so for you, I have produced this episode all about the loot. We'll talk about weapons, armor, all of the new aid items, and even all of the new perks available with Lonesome Road. Some of this stuff is available immediately upon installing Lonesome Road, even before we pass through the canyon wreckage. But most of it is only found in the Divide. We'll start with armor. One of the first pieces of armor we find in the Divide is the U.S. Army combat armor, which drops in the Hopeville missile silo and in a variety of other military shipping crates throughout the Divide. The U.S. Army combat armor grants us a DT of 18 and +3 to guns and +2 to survival. It looks like olive drab armor plates on top of a light brown base uniform. We find golden chevrons painted on the pauldrons, which means this suit was worn by a private. The U.S. Army combat armor is better than typical combat armor and reinforced combat armor, but it's not quite as good as Combat Armor Reinforced Mark II. Next up is the U.S. Army General outfit. We find this on the corpse of General Martin Retzlaff at the very end of the Hopeville missile silo. This outfit has a DT of just 1, but grants us +10 to speech and +5 to guns. It's a handsome-looking outfit consisting of an olive drab overcoat, a leather military belt, and a darker leather-like outfit with an extended collar. We find U.S. insignia pins on the lapels and a 4-star general rank set on each shoulder. Next is the breathing mask. We find a number of these throughout the Divide. The breathing mask has a DT of 2 and grants us +5 to radiation resistance. This is the same rad resist bonus as we get on the Remnants and Ganon family power armor helmets, but without the charisma penalty and without the high DR. The T-51B power armor helmet is the only power armor helm that has higher rad resistance than this mask. Unlike the rebreather, even though this is just a face mask, it does take up the entire hat slot, which means we can't wear this along with eyeglasses or hats. And there is one unique breathing mask in the game called Ulysses Mask. It only has a DT of 3, but it grants us a whopping +50 radiation resistance, and it only has a weight of 2. This is 45 radiation resistance higher than a standard breathing mask. This, when coupled with some Radaway and worn in conjunction with another radiation-boosting piece of armor like the house version of the Courier Duster, can make us nearly immune to radiation. But my favorite suits of armor from this DLC are the new Riot Gear pieces of armor. First up is just the standard Riot Gear. We can buy this from the commissary, or we can find a full suit of it within an armor chest inside the Hopeville military base armory. The Riot Gear has a DT of 20, but it weighs a whopping 30 pounds. Compare that to the Desert Ranger combat armor that we found in one of the survivalists' caves in Zion Canyon, which has a DT of 22, but also weighs 30 pounds. The major difference is that the Desert Ranger combat armor has no added bonuses, but this Riot Gear grants us +5 to guns and +1 to agility. The helmet, however, is very interesting. It only has a DT of 4 compared to the DT of 5 that came with the Desert Ranger combat helmet, but it grants us +1 to perception and gives us a bonus called Sneak Sight. This Sneak Sight improves our visibility when sneaking at night. If we crouch down between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. or anytime we're indoors, we get the red eye effect, which makes things easier to see in the dark. The Riot Gear looks very different from the Desert Ranger combat armor. Instead of a greenish jacket and brown pants, the Riot Gear has a brown and gray jacket and gray pants with brown boots. And instead of the green lenses in the mask, the Riot Gear has red lenses in the mask. It also has unique markings. The number 100 emblazoned on the throat guard. Strangely enough, even though the Riot Gear itself is classified as a medium armor, the helmet for some reason is classified as heavy armor, which means that we can't repair it with medium armor like we should be able to, therefore it can only be repaired by itself even if you have the jury rigging perk. The next tier of Riot Gear is the Advanced Riot Gear. We find this on the corpse of an NCR Riot Control Officer at the top of the Crow's Nest above the high road. The Advanced Riot Gear is an improvement over the Riot Gear. The armor has a DT of 21 compared to the Riot armor's DT of 20, and it has different effects. It grants us a bonus of +10 to explosives and +1 to endurance. It also weighs less, weighing only 25 pounds compared to the Riot Gear's 30. The helmet is also a big improvement, giving us a DT of 5 compared to the Riot Gear's DT of 4. It grants us +2 to perception and also gives us the same sneak sight effect. The Advanced Riot Gear differs cosmetically from the Riot Gear as well. Like the Riot Gear, this version has the numbers 100 on the throat guard, but the pants and jacket are brown. It also has green bracers made from a combat armor-like material on the forearms, and the shoulder pauldrons are a little bit more impressive, a little bulkier. They have white stripes going across both of them. The helmet has completely different markings. On the very front, we have a shield with a white and yellow field and a horse on the front. This is the symbol of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, a cavalry regiment found in our own world. It was founded in 1901, and it's also called the Black Horse Regiment. The only major difference between the real-world version and the Fallout version is that the patch of the 11th Armored Cavalry in the real world has a red and white field on the shield instead of yellow and white. As a side note, the motto of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment is Allons, meaning let's go. Similar to what a certain doctor says, Allons-y, let's go there. We find the final tier of Riot Gear when exploring the Divide. At the end of a tunnel, we reach a ruined building where we find the corpse of a sniper. On his body is the Elite Riot Gear and helmet. This suit is an improvement over the Advanced Riot Gear. The suit has a DT of 22 compared to the Advanced Riot Gear's 21. It has higher HP, meaning it degrades more slowly, and has +5 to critical chance, +10 to guns, and +1 to charisma. This is one of only 4 pieces of equipment that grant a bonus to critical chance. And it also weighs less, weighing only 23 pounds, less than all of the other suits. This is another handsome suit of armor. It looks similar to the others, but with some minor differences. It also has the number 100 on the throat guard, and like the advanced suit, has green combat armor on the forearms and shoulders. But this one also has green combat armor on the kneecaps, and gone are the white stripes. Beneath the jacket, this suit has 2 belts of ammunition and a canteen hanging from the belt. The helmet has a whopping DT of 6, which is amazing for medium armor, and it gives us the effects of sneak sight, +5 to speech, and +2 to perception. This suit of armor is more valuable than any other suit in the game. The armor itself is worth 12,500 caps, and the helmet, when fully repaired, is worth 1,500. The helmet is handsome, but lacks many of the markings that the other two had. No white stripes, no badge on the front, but lots of wear and tear and scratches. Next, we'll cover the Marked Man armor. There are 4 versions of the new Marked Man armor, ranging from light to medium. The first is the Marked Scout armor. The Marked Scout armor is a new piece of armor worn by these marked men enemies in the Divide. The armor has a DT of 6, and grants +2 to sneak and +1 to agility. And it weighs 15 pounds. It looks like it's been assembled from Legion armor. In particular, we find pieces of the Legion Explorer armor and Legion Prime armor. It's been fortified with license plates and road signs. The road signs read Taxco, Ruby Drive, and Sunset. And the license plate is a California plate, number RFJ22. Next is the Marked Trooper armor. This is a medium armor that has 8 DT, and it grants +2 to guns and +1 to endurance. It looks like it's been made from NCR armor. It too is reinforced with more road signs. We find signs that say, no parking anytime, Pinefall, Detroit Street, and Pine Falls Drive. Then we have the Marked Tribal armor. The Marked Tribal armor is a more heavily armored version of the Scout and Patrol armor. It appears to be made from Legionary armor. This suit grants us a DT of 10 and +2 to melee weapons and +1 to strength. Like many of the marked armors we've found so far, it has been reinforced with road signs. On the right gauntlet, we see a warning sign, watch for falling rocks. And finally, the Marked Patrol armor. This is a more advanced suit of Marked Man armor. It grants a DT of 10 and +2 to energy weapons and +1 to perception. It's a medium piece of armor. It looks like it's been made from Ncr Ranger Patrol armor. Like all Marked Men armor, it's been reinforced with road signs. On the back, we find a big Solitaire gas station sign. There's a stop sign affixed to the left thigh. The right shoulder is repaired with another Solitaire gas station sign and a Hope Street sign, and the right shin is reinforced with more Hope Street signs. There are 4 Marked Men bosses in the Divide, each of which carries a unique Marked Men helmet. First is the Marked Beast helmet, carried by the Marked Man mini-boss, Blister. This is a crude metal helmet beaten from scrap. It has a DT of 3 and grants +10 to energy resistance and +2 to energy weapons. It has the distinction of being the only armor piece that increases energy resistance. The Marked Beast helmet can be repaired with combat helmets. Next is the Marked Beast face helmet. This is carried by the Marked Man mini-boss, Beast. This one too has been forged by the Marked Men using scrap metal. It has a DT of 3 and grants +3 to melee and +2 to critical chance. It can be repaired with combat helmets. It's meant to resemble Lanius's helmet. We haven't met Legate Lanius yet, but the major differences between this and his helmet is that this one does not have a beard, and this one has a large red scar across the face. Next is the Marked Beast Tribal Helmet. This is worn by the Marked Beast mini-boss named Bonesaw. This is another scratch-built helmet from Marked Men of the Divide. It grants us a DT of 4 and +3 to both melee and unarmed. This one can also be repaired with combat helmets, and it most closely resembles the helmet worn by Legate Lanius. The faceplate is almost a carbon copy. All it's missing is the horn on the right side and the red frill on top. And finally, we have the Marked Beast Eyes helmet. This is worn by the Marked Beast mini-boss named Blade. This one is different from all of them in that the helmet only has a partial mask. It has an eye guard covering the bridge of the nose and the eyes, but it leaves the mouth and chin exposed. Strangely enough, even though it does have the eye mask, you can wear glasses and other eyewear with it. It grants a DT of 3, +3 to melee weapons, and +10 to hit points. You can repair it with combat helmets. One of the final rewards we get after completing the DLC is an array of sleeveless dusters. The first is called the Courier Duster, and there are 4 different types. The version of the Courier Duster that we get is different depending on the choices we made in the game. If we have high reputation with the NCR, then we get a version of the Courier's Duster that has the symbol of the 2-headed bear on the back. Its stats are also different. The NCR Courier Duster has a DT of 13, grants us 25 pounds to our carrying capacity, and +1 to endurance. Alternatively, if our reputation is high with the Legion, we instead get the Fighting Chance version of the Courier's Duster. This version has a Legion bull on the back. It also has 13 DT, but instead of endurance and carry weight, its effects are +1 to strength and +15 action points. If, however, we don't have high faction with the Legion or the NCR, and instead have a high reputation on the Vegas Strip, we get the Old World Justice version of the Courier Duster. This version has Ulysses' Old World flag symbol on the back, and it grants us +1 to agility and +30% to radiation resistance. The 4th version is the Blackjack version of the Courier Duster. The only way to get this is by having below neutral reputation with all 3 major factions in the game: Caesar's Legion, NCR, and the Strip. This is, in effect, the Yes Man version of the Courier's Duster. This version has a poker spade on the back with the number 21. Like the others, it grants us 13 DT, but gives us +1 to luck and +30% to poison resistance. We also get Ulysses Duster. This version, like the House version, has Ulysses' Old World flag symbol on the back. Like the Courier Duster, it has 13 DT, but it grants +5 to critical chance and +1 to charisma. Incidentally, it's possible to get 2 of these. If we choose to kill Ulysses, we can loot the one he's wearing from his body, and when we come out the other side of the canyon, we find another one in this chest. As a side note, the weight of both Ulysses and the Courier Duster is only 3. giving both dusters an incredible high DT to weight ratio, making it one of the best pieces of light armor in the game. There is one new suit of power armor in the DLC. We find it upon exploring the Long 15. After fighting our way through a gate to one of the camps, we get attacked by a mini-boss named Colonel Royes. On the corpse of Colonel Royes, we find two unique items, an Ncr Beret and a full suit of Scorched Sierra power armor. This suit was originally intended to come with a matching helmet, but it was cut from the game. However, the assets for this helm remained in the game files, and there are a number of mods designed to fix bugs that reinstate this helmet, which is why you see it on Colonel Royes' inventory here. But since it's not in the vanilla game, I won't be talking about its stats. The Ncr Salvaged power armor itself is a modified version of the T45D power armor. It has 24 DT, which is not the most a suit of power armor in the game has, but its stats are amazing. It grants plus 25 to fire resistance, plus 1 to strength, and heals 2 points of HP over time. Unlike the salvaged power armor, however, it does require power armor training to use. But, unlike most power armors, it does not have an agility penalty upon wearing it. And it looks absolutely stunning. On the left pauldron, we see a taxidermied bear head, affixed in place with a sash held together with a golden pin. It looks gray or gunmetal. We find red paint in the cracks and yellow or gold on the ridges, giving us the impression that at one time the full suit had been painted gold or had been covered in gold leaf. We see that the power supply on the back is a green color, and it has green accents all over the body. Instead of the power armor helmet, which we had to restore using a mod, Colonel Royes was wearing an Ncr Beret. The Ncr Beret looks like a typical green military beret, with the difference being that it has an Ncr pin on the front, depicting the two-headed bear and the California star. This is a stunning suit of armor for power armor users, but you have to launch a nuke at the Ncr to get it. How frustrating. We find a Legion suit of armor similar to this. It's not power armor, but it's still incredibly powerful. When we head to the dry wells, we get attacked by a mini-boss named Gaius Magnus. On Gaius Magnus's corpse is the armor of the 87th tribe. This is a powerful suit of armor that rivals power armor. It has 22 DT and grants us plus 10 AP, 3 critical chance, and 1 charisma. This suit, unlike virtually all other Legion armor, is not made from scrap. This suit was crafted after the apocalypse, made from beaten plate, personally tailored to Gaius Magnus. On the back, we see the Golden Legion Bull and the number 87, written in Roman numerals. We learned from Volpe's Inculta that the Legion had conquered 86 tribes. I assume then that the 87th tribe depicted here is the Legion itself. When all 86 tribes become an amalgam, together they form the 87th tribe called Caesar's Legion. And on the front, my goodness, look at this gorgeous suit of armor. We again see a golden bull, and the pauldrons are silver and outlined in gunmetal with 2 huge spikes, or horns, or maybe teeth, sticking out of them. It has a pterygus like all Legion armor, which resembles a skirt protecting the thighs, but this one is black instead of red. That's it for armor. Now it's time to move on to weapons. The Lonesome Road DLC has a number of new weapon types, as well as special unique weapons. The first new weapon type is called the Arc Welder. We find our very first one early in the DLC while exploring the Hopeville missile silo. In the room where we activate Eddie for the first time, we find a big supply shelf, and we find a brand new weapon, an Arc Welder, requiring an energy weapon skill of 75 to use. It shoots high voltage streams of lightning and works a lot like a flamer. Because it does electrical damage, it gains a plus 8 damage bonus against robots and a plus 4 damage bonus against enemies wearing power armor, with the exception of those wearing Ncr power armor. When fully repaired, it has a base DPS of 72, but energy weapon users with all related perks can bump this up to a DPS of 135.1. Next up is the H&H Tools nail gun, which we can find all over the place. If you want one, just open up a toolbox. This nail gun is a new silenced weapon with Lonesome Road. It boasts having the highest rate of fire of any one-handed gun in the game. It's an automatic weapon using nails as ammunition, but being an automatic weapon, it blows through nails really quickly. We'll save this only for special occasions when we really need to get off a sneak critical. Next up is the Bowie Knife. We also find this early on in the Hopeville missile silo, and it's frequently carried by the marked men. The Bowie Knife requires 75 in melee weapons to use, and it does 23 damage, doing 79.6 DPS. When used in VATS, it has a special attack called Dirt Nap. The Dirt Nap attack only deals 80% of its normal damage, but it costs 8 fewer action points to execute. It has a brown handle and what appears to be streaks of blood on the blade. It's also stamped with a serial number 02280. There is one unique Bowie knife in the game, which we find stabbed into a lamppost in the Courier's Mile. This is the best Bowie knife in the game, and one of the best one-handed melee weapons in the game. It's a particularly great find for my character because the Cowboy perk grants bonuses to knives like the Bowie knife. Bloodnap has a base damage of 30, 7 more than the Bowie knife, and more even than a fully upgraded War Club from Honest Hearts. It's also faster, dealing 3.69 attacks per second compared to the Bowie knife's 3.46 attacks per second. This brings the DPS of the Bloodnap up to 110.8. compared to the Bowie knife's 79.6. Bloodnap has a special melee attack called the Bloodnap attack, which does only 80% of its normal damage in VATS, but it costs 7 fewer action points, greatly increasing the amount of damage you can do per action point. It also grants the player plus 10 to sneak and has a greater weapon reach. It looks like a typical Bowie knife, and it is considered an improved holdout weapon, meaning you can sneak it into casinos. For a courier who has all related perks, this weapon can do a whopping 290.7 DPS. That's more damage than even Old Glory, the flagpole we got from Ulysses. But of course, even though that one's slower, it does pack a bigger punch. A new weapon type is called a flare gun. We often find these in emergency kits, and the marked men are fond of using them. It's not supposed to be used for primary combat. Instead, if you hit an enemy with a flare, it does a little bit of damage and sets the enemy on fire. Its primary use, however, is to frighten abomination-type creatures. If you shoot a flare at an abomination, it'll flee. Abominations include Deathclaws, Centaurs, Night Stalkers, and Tunnelers. It is an energy pistol, so damage will be modified by your character's energy skill, but the base damage is 10 plus 1 over 10 seconds, with a DPS of 17.5. Next up is Blade of the West, which are wielded by marked men. Blade of the West is a stronger version of the bumper sword. It's stronger even than its counterpart, Blade of the East, wielded by Legate Lanius. It does 60 damage, which is 5 less than Blade of the East, but because it's a much faster weapon dealing 2.13 attacks per second compared to the East's 1.58, it has a much higher DPS, a DPS of 127.9 compared to 104.6. The only benefit East has over West is a bleed effect that does 2 damage over 10 seconds. Next, and my personal favorite, is Red Glare. We can find 3 of these, 1 in the final chest we get after completing the DLC, and 2 in the ruins of Hopeville, near to where we find the laser detonator. In fact, it is this weapon that we saw depicted in the schematics that we discovered in the Hopeville missile silo. It looks like the military did indeed bring this weapon into production. Red Glare is a fully automatic rocket launcher. It fires incredibly quickly, and it has a scope, which makes it effective both at mid and long ranges. The rockets have a huge splash radius, making it an incredibly effective weapon for firing at large groups of enemies. It can deal 4 attacks per second, and in VATS costs 25 AP per attack. Each attack does 20 damage plus 40 modified by the player's explosive skill. Thus, the lowest amount of DPS it can do is 240, and the highest, with all related perks, is 449, making it one of the most powerful weapons in the entire game. It is also by far the most valuable weapon in the game. When fully repaired and upgraded, Red Glare is worth 46,500 caps. At last, we finally have something that can use all those rockets we've been looting. There are 3 weapon mods for Red Glare, which we can purchase from any commissary. Red Glare Alpha Strike, the Red Glare Auto Launcher, and Red Glare Far Sighting. Upon purchasing all 3 upgrades for Red Glare, we complete the challenge Rockets Red Glare, and we earn an achievement. Red Glare Alpha Strike increases rocket speed by 200%. The Auto Launcher increases the fire rate by 25%, and the Far Sighting increases its zoom to 4.35 magnification. Next up is the shoulder-mounted machine gun. We find one in the rubble of a building after detonating the last nuclear warhead in Hopeful before entering the collapsed tunnel. It's also used frequently by marksmen towards the end of the DLC. This machine gun is brand new to Lonesome Road. It thankfully uses 10mm ammunition, which is plentiful and easy to come by. It does 30 damage per attack, but it attacks so quickly that its DPS is a whopping 210 before any perks come into consideration. It's a beautiful looking weapon, and as the name suggests, it mounts comfortably on the shoulder. There are 3 weapon mods we can purchase for this sucker from the commissary. A shoulder-mounted machine gun mechanical upgrade, which increases weapon condition by 25%, a recoil compensator, which reduces spread by 0.2, and an extended magazine, which increases maximum ammunition capacity by 15. Next up is the Fist of Rar. We don't find this in the world, instead we have to craft it. To do so, we have to kill the mini-boss Deathclaw named Rar. On his corpse, we find Rar's Talon. Upon looting it, we get a message. This claw is larger and more impressive than those of lesser death claws. You might be able to turn it into a weapon if you find a workbench. We can take this to any workbench to craft the Fist of Rar. It doesn't require any other ingredients, but it does require an unarmed skill of 75 to craft the thing. As a side note, if we have the Wild Wasteland trait, this weapon is instead called Fist of the North Rar, which of course is a reference to the post-apocalyptic anime Fist of the North Star. The Fist of Rar is much more powerful than your typical Deathclaw gauntlet. It has a damage of 50, while a typical gauntlet has only 20. This brings its DPS up to 97.8 compared to a typical gauntlet's 32.6. It has higher critical damage at 75, although it has a lower critical percent multiplier of only 2 compared to the standard gauntlet's 5. But it's much faster, dealing 2 attacks per second compared to the standard gauntlet's 1.6 attacks per second. This is due to it costing fewer AP, only 24 compared to a standard gauntlet's 26. Next is Old Glory. This is Ulysses' signature weapon. This is the flagpole Ulysses was using to attack us back in his temple. This amazing melee weapon does 45 damage and deals 1.9 attacks per second at the cost of 22 action points, bringing its DPS up to 85. It deals 80 critical damage and has a 1.5 critical percent multiplier. It has a special Grand Slam attack that deals 200% damage in VATS at the cost of 13 more action points. A Grand Slam critical hit does the most damage of any melee attack in the entire game. Additionally, a Grand Slam sneak attack is so powerful that it can kill any enemy in the entire game in one shot, except the X-42 Giant Robo-Scorpion from Old World Blues. It can be repaired with pull cues and throwing spears. Like with Ulysses Duster, it's possible to get 2 versions of Old Glory. If we kill him in the temple, we can loot one off his body, and when we come out on the other end, we find another one sitting in this crate. Next up is the Great Bear Grenade Rifle. This is a new unique grenade rifle that we can find in the Long 15. The Great Bear Grenade Rifle is one of the best grenade rifles in the game. It does more raw damage than any other grenade rifle, doing a whopping 15 damage compared to 2 damage done by every other grenade rifle. It has the same number of attacks per second as a standard grenade rifle, 2.14, bringing the DPS of this weapon up to 246.4 compared to a standard grenade rifle's 218.6. It also has way more critical damage than a standard grenade rifle, having 15 critical damage compared to a grenade rifle's 1. It also costs slightly fewer action points, requiring 32 per attack compared to a grenade rifle's 35, which brings its damage per action point up to 3.6 compared to 2.9. It also has significantly less spread, 0.5 compared to 1, which means you're twice more likely to hit your target with this sucker than with a grenade rifle. And it is a thing of beauty. Likely salvaged from Navarro, it has old-world military markings on it. The stock is painted a patriotic royal blue, and stamped on the side is a white US military star. Finding gear like this almost makes me wish I had spec'd into explosives. But again, we can only find this if we nuke the NCR. What a disappointment. Another grenade rifle we can find is the Red Victory Grenade Rifle. We only find this at dry wells. It only does 2 damage, plus 100 area effect damage modified by your explosive skill, the same damage as a standard grenade rifle, and 13 less than the Great Bear Grenade Rifle. However, it's way faster, doing 3.21 attacks per second compared to 2.14. This brings the DPS of the Red Victory Grenade Rifle up to 327.9, which is much higher than the Great Bear version at 246.4. The downside is it only does 1 critical damage instead of the Great Bear's 15, but it costs fewer action points, 29 instead of the Great Bear's 32. This brings the damage per action point up to 3.5, only 0.1 less than the Great Bear. This grenade rifle is emblazoned with Chinese communist insignia. The stock is red, and it's dotted with golden stars. There are 2 new thrown explosives in the game. The first is called a Satchel Charge. These are the new explosive items we can have Eddie craft once a day instead of energy ammunition. The major difference between these Satchel Charges and other placed explosives is it has an incredibly short detonation timer. They explode almost immediately upon triggering them. The Satchel Charge is one of the most powerful placed explosives in the game, dealing more damage than even a bottle cap mine. This was a last-minute decision. One of the developers, when asked about this, said that originally it would have had double the fuse it does now, and its damage would have been half. We can craft Satchel Charges with 25 lead, 25 pistol powder, 1 scrap electronics, and 1 sensor module. Next up is the Flashbang. We find a bunch of these in the collapsed tunnel, and then in containers later on while exploring the divide. It looks like a dark green canister with a red pin. It doesn't do much damage, having a measly 0.7 DPS. However, it deals between 25 to 100 fatigue, depending upon how close to the center of the blast the enemy was, giving us the chance to render an enemy completely unconscious, and it removes 50 weapon skill from enemies for 10 seconds. The frenzy chance for tunnelers is only 25%. We find a variety of new consumables with this DLC. The first is the MRE. MRE stands for Meal Ready to Eat, and they're used by soldiers, members of the United States Armed Forces. These MREs heal 2 hit points per second over 15 seconds, and they don't expose us to any radiation. But their real value is when playing on hardcore mode. They only grant 1 hit point per second for 10 seconds, but they remove 200 starvation, making it an essential food item to collect for those playing on hardcore mode. Next is the Auto-Inject Stim Pack. We find these all over the Divide, but we can craft them from any workbench as soon as we install the DLC. When we have one of these in our inventory, we automatically use them when our health gets below 50%, and it heals 81 HP. Crafting it requires 1 Stim Pack and 1 sensor module, and they look like a standard Stim Pack, except now they have this numbered dial at the top. This DLC also introduces us to the Auto-Inject Super Stim Pack. We find these in the Divide, and we can again craft them, but it requires a science skill of 100. To craft an Auto-Inject Super Stim Pack requires 1 sensor module and 1 Super Stim Pack. These are different in that we automatically use them when our health is at 25%, and these heal 146 HP. They look just like a Super Stim Pack, only they have these new fancy dials at the top. We find a new food item called the Fiery Purgative. We can craft these at any campfire or hot plate. The Fiery Purgative cures animal poison and removes 5 rads over 10 seconds, but costs us 1 endurance. To craft a Fiery Purgative requires 1 jalapeno pepper, 1 vodka, and 1 white horse nettle. We have to have a survival skill of 25 or greater, and these just look like small burlap satchels. The next cooking item is called Rushing Water. This increases attack speed by 50% and heals 2 HP over the span of 2 seconds. This requires a survival skill of 50 to create, and the ingredients are 1 jet and 1 purified water. This just looks like a bottle of water. Also new with Lonesome Road is the Snakebite Tourniquet. These also cure animal poison, but the unique thing about them is that they are automatically used upon being poisoned, and they increase our poison resistance by 85. It requires a survival skill of 30 or more, and costs 1 buffalo gourd seed and 1 surgical tubing. These just look like surgical tubing when dropped. Next up is Bitter Drink. This isn't new, but the ability to craft it is new with Lonesome Road. We get the crafting recipe after following certain dialogue trees with Ulysses, but only if we leave him alive at the end of the DLC. Up until this point, we have only encountered Bitter Drink on the corpses of legionaries. It looks like the Legion consumes and adopts the technology and wisdom from the tribes they conquer, the recipe for Bitter Drink being one of them. To craft a bitter drink at a campfire costs 1 Brock flower, 1 empty Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle, and 1 Xander root. It requires a survival skill of 15. Bitter drink just looks like a tiny clay vial. It heals 2 hit points per second for 18 seconds, but it's notable in that it does not harm the courier with radiation. The next consumable, I think, was a mistake. At the very beginning of the DLC, just after leaving the Hopeville missile silo, we find a ruined solitaire gas station. Behind the gas station, we find 1 shipping crate, and inside the crate is some Nuka-Cola. However, this crate has a 10% chance of spawning a Nuka-Cola Quantum. Now one might think, Nuka-Cola Quantum, so what? However, there is no Nuka-Cola Quantum in Fallout New Vegas. And the reason for this, the developers theorized, was that Nuka-Cola Quantum was released the day the bombs dropped, which means that the Nuka-Cola company wouldn't have had a chance to deliver bottles to the West Coast the very day the bombs dropped. Which is sound reasoning, however, I think it's much more likely that Nuka-Cola would have shipped crates of Nuka-Cola Quantum to retailers weeks before it was supposed to be made publicly available. That is why we find so many bottles of Nuka-Cola Quantum in downtown DC, for example. At any rate, Nuka-Cola Quantum was cut from Fallout New Vegas, but for some reason this one box has a 10% chance to spawn one, making it the only Nuka-Cola Quantum available in the entire game. The only way to get it is to save just before leaving the Hopeville missile silo. Then we have to go through Ulysses' dialogue through Eddie over and over and over again as we try to farm the crate. But since it's a 10% chance, we'll likely find a bottle within 10 attempts. I found mine on my 9th attempt. In Fallout New Vegas, a Nuka-Cola Quantum heals 20 AP at the cost of 9 rads. And it looks just like a Nuka-Cola Quantum from Fallout 3. Nice and purpley. I'm gonna save mine as a player home decoration. That's all the aid, but there are a few more items that are special to this DLC. We find the first while exploring the ruins of the Divide. After detonating a nuclear warhead that's blocking our path to the caves of Abaddon, we can turn right into a small cavern. And sitting on a filing cabinet, what is that? A rock? Getting closer, we see that it's Seymour. And our Wild Wasteland perk triggers. This, of course, is a reference to Futurama, everyone's favorite episode, Jurassic Bark, where Fry finds his long-lost pet dog petrified. It's Dolomite, baby! We find the next item while exploring the high road. After killing the Deathclaws and taking the high road south, we pass by a destroyed Lone Wanderer motorcycle, and lying next to a red toolbox and an ammo crate is a new unique item, Roughing It Bedroll Kit. The Roughing It Bedroll Kit allows you to sleep just about anywhere out under the stars. Select it in your Pip-Boy and sleep your cares away. This is one of 3 Roughing It Bedroll Kits we find in the Divide. It does fully heal you like sleeping in any bed does, but it doesn't give us the well-rested perk, and we can only use it out of doors. We can't use it inside. We find the next item while exploring the Junction 7 rest stop on the ground beneath the High Road overpass. If we climb to the 2nd floor, we can loot some items in a tipped-over bookshelf, and in the top shelf, the Lonesome Road Snow Globe. You've found a limited edition Mojave Landmark Snow Globe. This snow globe has been added to the collection at the Lucky 38, and upon looting it, we are magically gifted 2,000 caps. And finally, we've got perks. There are 3 perks we can get by completing the story to Lonesome Road. The first is called the Marked perk. Upon killing Bonesaw, we get the Marked perk. We achieve this perk by killing 3 of the 4 mini-bosses in the Divide. This perk grants us 10% DT and allows us to deal 10% more damage against marked men. The next perk is pretty rare. We can only get it if we choose to leave Eddie behind before confronting Ulysses at Ulysses' temple. If we choose to leave Eddie in his pod, we get a perk called Lonesome Road. You left Eddie behind in Ulysses' temple. Not that you needed the help anyway. As long as you have no companions, your attacks inflict 10% damage, and you have plus 10% accuracy in VATS. And then finally, upon completing the DLC, we get 1 of 4 perks, depending upon the choices that we make. We can get the first by nuking the Ncr. With this, we earn the Bear Slayer perk, allowing us to put a single point into any of our special stats. We gain reputation with Caesar's Legion, but lose reputation with the Ncr. We get a different variant if we choose to nuke the Legion. If we choose this option, we get the perk Scourge of the East, which also allows us to put 1 point into any of our special stats. We gain reputation with the Ncr, but we lose reputation with Caesar's Legion. If instead we choose to nuke both the Ncr and the Legion, we earn the Dead Man's Burden perk, which also allows us to put 1 point into any of our special stats. We lose reputation with both the Ncr and Caesar's Legion, but we gain fame with the Boomers and the Powder Gangers. Because hey, they love explosions. But if we chose to nuke no one and instead disarm the missile, we get the Divide Survivor perk. You can put a single point into any of your special attributes. We gain reputation with the Followers of the Apocalypse and the Brotherhood of Steel for stopping another Armageddon. Incidentally, this is the only way to become idolized with the Brotherhood of Steel. Even after having completed every single quest in Hidden Valley, there is simply not enough to do to become idolized unless we stop the missiles in the Divide. Aside from those, Lonesome Road gives us 13 regular perks that we can now purchase upon leveling up. The first is Ain't Like That Now. Maybe you were bad once, but you ain't like that now. Your karma has been reset to 0. Attacks cost 20% less AP, you regenerate AP 25% faster, and your attack speed is increased by 20%. You're also immune to critical hits. This perk requires that the courier is level 50 and has bad karma. The next is Alertness. This requires a level of 12, that we have less than 10 perception, but greater than 6. You've learned to keep your senses alert to any danger. When crouched and not moving, you gain +2 to your perception to help you find enemies before they find you. The next is Broad Daylight, which has a level requirement of 36. You're so sneaky that you can sneak even with your Pip-Boy light on. Anytime the Pip-Boy light is on, you get a sneak bonus to offset the light's sneak penalty. Next is Burden to Bear. This requires level 30, 6 strength, and 6 endurance. The Wastelander with the most gear wins, or at least survives. You can now carry an additional 50 pounds of gear, and it stacks with the Strong Back perk. Next is Certified Tech. This requires level 40 and 90 into Science. Your knowledge of robotic components allows you to break them more easily and salvage their mechanical corpses. You have a 25% chance to score critical hits against robots, and you'll also find more useful components on robots you destroy. Next is Irradiated Beauty. This requires level 22 and 8 endurance. Anytime you sleep, you remove all of your rads in addition to regaining all of your health. In hardcore mode, you still don't regain health, but you do lose 100 rads. Next is Roughen It, requiring level 28 and 100 in survival. You're more at home under the open stars than under a roof. Anytime you sleep outside, you gain the benefits of being well rested even if you don't own a bed. Next is Just Lucky I'm Alive. This requires level 50 and neutral karma. You've had lots of close calls. Whenever you finish a fight with less than 25% health, your luck increases by 4 for 3 minutes. You're also immune to critical hits, and your own critical hits inflict plus 50% damage. Next is Lessons Learned. This requires level 26 and 6 intelligence. The Wasteland has taught you some hard lessons, but you've remembered them all. You gain plus 1% to earned experience per level gained. For example, plus 25% experience at level 25. Next is Thought You Died. This requires level 50 and good karma. Your storied past has fallen from memory because everyone thought you died. Your karma is reset, you inflict 10% damage, and for every 100 points of karma, you gain 10 health. You're also immune to critical hits. Next is Tunnel Runner, requiring level 26 and 8 agility. The Warrens of the Divide have taught you to keep your head down. Your movement speed is greatly increased while sneaking in light armor. Next is Voracious Reader, requiring level 22 and 7 intelligence. You don't just read books, you tear into them. Damaged books you pick up become blank magazines, which you can use to copy your existing skill magazines at a workbench, or to convert blank magazines back into books. And finally, we have the option to purchase Walker Instinct. This requires level 18 and 50 in survival. Your senses have become so keen that you can feel the slightest vibration in the ground. You gain plus 1 perception and agility attributes while outside. And with that, we've collected every brand new item and explored every perk from Lonesome Road. We can finally put a cherry on this Mojave Sunday and travel on to whatever comes next. Thank you for joining me on this great adventure. Many of you have been asking for Lonesome Road for an incredibly long time, and I'm grateful that you've all been so patient. It was so much fun playing this DLC, and incredibly rewarding to produce Lonesome Road content for my channel. With this DLC done, we will return to our regularly scheduled programming of content from Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas, and Fallout 3. I'll be producing content from all 3 games for some time, and in a month or so, we'll start the next big DLC series. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you've been asking about the song I made to serve as the intro for this series and a major plot device in episode 7, you can find it now on iTunes or the Apple Store. I published the song, and you can find a link to it in the description below. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, folks. Rubble Ramp. The nuclear apocalypse has made so many ruins, but for some reason many of these ruins are conveniently stacked, allowing us access to otherwise inaccessible areas. We celebrate this phenomenon with my new shirt, Rubble Ramp. You can find this image as a shirt and also as a poster. I think it looks particularly good as a wall poster. I have a bunch of other designs on shirts and on a bunch of other products. If interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming one of my patrons on Patreon. But more than anything, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, with a brand new video.